Okie dokie. Today we are going to be talking about budgeting for babies with Rachel Cruze. I am also really interested in everything that she has to say, the budgeting aspect of having kids, birthing kids, fertility treatments, saving for kids' college, all the things that you want to buy for a newborn and just kids at different phases of their lives. Budgeting for all of that is something that is a subject that's come up a lot on this BDA Baby series and not one that we have talked about. So I'm really excited to talk to Rachel about that and just get some really great information for everybody, especially for a lot of the people who are asking about, there's so many different products that you can buy. What do you buy? What do you splurge on? How do you save? And also just the fertility aspect of it, because that tends to get really expensive as well. Bring in Rachel and we'll get right to it, since it's a very big subject to talk about. Hi.
Hi, Katherine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for joining me from Vegas.
I know we just landed and our flight was a little bit longer, I think, because they detoured because of storms. And I was like, okay, as long as I can get to my hotel room by 1:00, I'm good. So
thank you so much for making it work. And I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like this is a subject that's come up so much over the past little over a year that I've been doing this BDA Baby series, is people just asking how to budget for all the different phases of before, during, after baby. So I'm really excited to be able to give people this information because people start wondering about budgets before having kids sometimes. And also, depending on what your fertility journey is like, it can get very expensive before you even have a baby. So I want to talk a little bit about that with you.
yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, it's interesting because even just the word budgets, I feel like makes people cringe sometimes because it automatically people think a budget means being cheap or a budget means I'm having to say no and live in restriction. Where I look at a budget as the complete opposite. I think a budget is permission to spend. A budget, yes, will have guardrails because one of my messages is I want people to live below their means. I don't want you going above and spending more than what you make because that will lead to debt. And I think it causes a lot of stress and it doesn't allow you to truly, I think, live your best life when that's a part of your financial journey. So living below your means is really important. And in that, the budget is it's your roadmap to do it, right? It's you saying, okay, I'm going to be intentional with the money I make when I earn an income and it hits my bank account. That amount of money I want to spend on purpose. I want to save on purpose. I want to give on purpose. And so that's what a budget is. It's just your plan. And I'm a natural spender more than a natural saver. So for me, I'm like, a budget is permission to spend. It's permission to get the fun baby gear if that's what you want, if it's there and you have the money for it. So I think kind of reframing our minds that a budget, again, it is your roadmap on how to make your money go the furthest and use your money as a tool to create a life you love versus your money telling you what to do your whole life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that that's actually a really important way to reframe the word budget, because I think also, like, I remember just when I was in high school and my mom bringing up the word budget for the first time to me, I was like, oh my gosh, does that mean something bad? Like, I think a lot of us have, different context with that word. So being able to be smart about it and also teach people about it, the younger, the better, I'm sure is the message that you also preach. But when it comes to just like thinking of family and wanting to expand your family, since that's what we talk about so much on BDA Baby, when is it really a good time for people to even start thinking about starting to save, or how much it would cost to have a baby?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, according to the CDC, the average amount it takes is around $10,000 to have a baby, kind of your before care, your after care. Now, Catherine, I have 3 little ones. So I have 7, a 4, and a 2-year-old. So I kind of went back even to my stuff and I was looking, and I'm from Nashville. And I have insurance, right? So for me, out of pocket, it was closer to like $6,000. So it was a little bit less than that average. But again, I think it depends on state. It depends on your insurance. There's a lot of factors that come into play. So I always tell people, hey, when you are, thinking, okay, we want to try to have a baby. And I would say, keep on your financial goals, whatever those are, whether that's getting out of debt or saving for emergency funds. And then once it gets serious, AKA once you actually get pregnant or something you're having to take a different course, that's when you want to pause everything else and say, okay, we're going to pause paying off debt. We're going to pause saving for an emergency fund. And we're going to just stockpile as much money away during that time. Because if you are pregnant, obviously that's around 9 months that you're going to have money saved. And then once you go through the process and mom is good, baby is good, if everyone's home and safe, you can kind of press play back on your financial journey and take that saved money then and use it to do what you were doing earlier, whether it's paying off debt or saving up for a down payment on a home, whatever it is. But I always tell people just to pause whatever they're doing financially and just save as much cash as possible.
And when someone does get pregnant and they start thinking about that, because I was recently talking to a friend of mine who had a baby last year. Both her and her significant other lost their jobs in COVID. They did not have health insurance. They delivered their baby in the state of California, which is very expensive. And were very shocked by how much it ended up costing to just even birth a baby. And that can be really overwhelming for a lot of people, but I feel like a lot of people don't really think about those things in advance, and they're later left with a bill that's astronomical just to even have the child. And that doesn't include swaddles and one and diapers, all the things. So what kind of advice can you give about that?
Yeah, so I would say if you are still unemployed, I would look for insurance, because it is going to be, if it's out of your pocket completely, it's going to be extremely expensive, especially if there is something that happens. I had a friend, this was years ago, but she had a premature baby. They ended up at Vanderbilt, some of the best care, which they were so gifted at. But the bill ended up, Katherine, being close to $1 million, but insurance covered it. But I mean, literally they got the bill and she was like, oh my gosh, if we had not had insurance. So I would say this is kind of a medical expense, you could say, which I hate to say that babies are that, but in a sense, I'm like, if you know, okay, we want to start a family. I know it's super expensive when you are either just self-employed and you don't have employees to get health insurance, or even if you're unemployed, but I would do something, whether it's the government route of, Medicare, Medicaid, or if it's something like COBRA insurance, if you have left a job, you can that up to, I think, 18 months now. So any type of insurance, even if it's going to be expensive premium month to month, it's going to be worth that investment while you're pregnant and have the baby. And then you can drop that insurance if you need to, because if it's out of pocket too expensive, or you have a job and you can switch insurances. But I would highly recommend getting insurance, even if it's expensive month to month.
When people are pregnant, there's obviously like everything that people are doing, especially pregnant for the first time. All the things that I feel like your phone listens to you and just like it bombards you with all the different things that you need to buy. You have to have this. You need to buy this in order to have your first baby, all the things. And it can be very overwhelming I was really overwhelmed when I was pregnant with my daughter, just about like what's the correct thing to buy? What do you splurge on versus save on? There's obviously a lot of baby products that are incredibly expensive, and then there's a budget-friendly version, but then you're thinking, if I buy the budget-friendly version, is that safe for my baby? Is that okay? There are a lot of different things to think about as you prepare for baby before the baby even arrives. Do you have any specific tips for people that are looking to be smart about their purchases ahead of baby's arrival?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say don't let your emotions override really what's going on. And it's so hard for first-time parents. I mean, I know for me, I was like, I want the Pottery Barn kids washcloths. Like I want all the things. And then by my third kid, Katherine, my third looks homeless. I'm like, we just throw clothes on. I'm like, we're just going. So it's amazing the things that you care about as a first-time parent versus not as much as that kids down the road. I like to invest in things. I know this kind of sounds silly, but that I know I'm going to be able to use for kid to kid, and that it's not disgusting. So for me, like a high chair, I don't want to get used because I'm like, it's gross because I feel like kids eat on it. So I'm like, I'll buy that new. A car seat I'll probably buy new for safety reasons, and you use it all the time, and you can use it kid to kid, especially if you get a good one, it will last. In a stroller. So the things that you're like, okay, I can invest money in and I can use it for multiple kids, that's great. But honestly, so much other stuff. I think about clothes. I'm like, do consignment. It's amazing how many people, including me, on your first, you buy nice, beautiful, wonderful clothes, and then the kid grows out of it within 2 weeks, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't get to wear half these outfits. And then you take it to consignment or wherever, you give it away. So things that you can just shop consignment, do it. Things like bibs or things that get, washcloths, all of that, get on Amazon or Target. Like, you don't have to get the name brands of everything. And so again, I know first time parents, they're so excited and their excitement overrules kind of logic at times. But you just have to be smart about it. And when you have a number too, like we were talking about with the budget, that okay, here's the amount of money I have that we have for the next 5 months, that we can start buying things for the nursery or what we want to do. That's going to be your guiding principle. You really need to let that money that you've put aside to say, here's what we're going to use to be that. Because that's going to determine, are you going to get the $1,000 crib or the $200 crib? It's going to really help guide that. And I never like to say like, that a certain stroller price is ridiculous or a certain, crib is ridiculous. Because if you have the money for it and you're able to buy it, that's okay. But that's the problem, is that when you don't have the money, you don't need to go overboard with it. So making sure you're staying within your means in these purchases. So there are some investment pieces I think for sure is smart to buy new and to buy good quality. But there's other stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. If there are 3 things that you would say to like a first-time parent to for sure splurge on, knowing that maybe they want to have more kids or they want to be able to recycle and use. I mean, I know I'm the oldest in my family, and my mom reused like outfits, and I even now at 32, I am putting a lot of the outfits that I wore when I was little on my daughter, which I'm like, this is money well spent that my mom spent 32 years ago, because this is working out well. But of course there are things that you just don't want to save, either for sanitary reasons or new data comes out about a new car seat that's helpful. But if there are things, 3 things that a family or starting a new family should splurge on, what would you say those would be?
Yeah, I would say car seat for sure. For me, the stroller, and we bought a double stroller at first, but it's an Up a Baby brand. So it's like you can use it just as one. And then when you have 2 kids, you stack it on 2. And now that we have 3, you can do the little. So I was thinking long term, in that, and it's lasted us. So I give props to good quality stuff, because it lasts. So I'd say car seat, stroller. This is a funny one, but it's just true. The crib mattress. I know that sounds funny, but all my kids use the same crib mattress. We bought a really cheap crib. I didn't really get an expensive crib, but the mattress itself, I was like, you know what? Probably as a first time mom, probably a little fearful of like, oh, I want it to be good and safe and all that. But it lasted. I'm like, and I used that same mattress for all 3 kids. So that could be something. I mean, a high chair. Yeah. You could probably get that used if you really wanted to, but food kind of, I'm like, I'll get a new high chair.
And then when it comes to, the baby arrives and there are all of these, I was really overwhelmed. My daughter is 20 months now, but I was really overwhelmed even in like the first year with the amount of things that people told me that I needed to buy, whether it was, these toys that are marketed to us to make your child smarter or to hit these milestones that everybody's talking about. And at the end of the day, I feel like my mom always was telling me like, kids want to play with like a thing of toilet paper, like it doesn't matter. But in that first kind of couple years of a child's life, what are the things to really be splurging on? Because as you said, clothes last for like a minute, and you have to spend money on diapers, of course, and wipes and whatever life might throw your way. But are there certain things that you should kind of be saving for to be spending on?
Yeah. I think for me, there was a subscription box. And I'm not like a subscription huge fan, but someone gave it to me as a gift. And now I'm like, gosh, I would love to give this, because it was a box that came, and I would tell you the brand if I honestly remembered. Is it Loverly?
Oh, Love Every, yeah.
Yes, Love Every. That's it. Yes. So, and I honestly have no idea the price point, so don't even quote me, but someone gave it to me as a gift. And every month we got this box, and the toys were great because they were like wood, they weren't plastic, they were wooden. So it was that, and there was always an educational piece, you know, like you were talking about. So something that and it's minimal, right? It's just that one box. So instead of feeling you have to go down the Target aisle or go on Amazon and just see countless numbers, having something that's just confined that shows up could be a good investment just to keep yourself in a boundary of like, okay, this is all I need. That's good. I'd say that. I would say books. I mean, my kids, poor third kid, I think he's been read to like 5 times in his whole life. So I'm like, I'm sorry, Charles. But we do try to read as much as possible. But I'm like, those lasts. And the book, I love reading personally. And I love reading books. So I'm like, any type of board book. And there's so many sets and just sweet kid books out there. So I would invest in books because those will pass down. Yeah, you know, between generations, or between kids. And then I'm trying to think of the last thing that I would say. Okay, here's one. I don't know why this came to mind, but it helped as a first-time mom. And my mom saw it, and she's like, I cannot believe y'all have this. I was like, I know, but I'm taking it. It was a baby bathtub, okay, plastic little bathtub, but it had a temperature gauge on it, like where the faucet hit the thing.
Yeah.
And it would light up like red, too hot, or green, good, or whatever. And just as a first-time mom, like I remember thinking, oh, this is so helpful because I'm not having to second guess with bath time. Bath time was already kind of stressful of like, am I doing this right? So those little things that just give you confidence as a mom, something
Right.
so small and so silly as an electric bathtub thing, it was helpful. It really was. And, you know, we used it, multiple kids. So that was great.
Yeah.
So much out there, but I think to your point, there's so much out there. And honestly, like I mean, if you got the budget and you want to spend it, you can, but you're going to have a shelf or a closet full of a bunch of crap of stuff that your kids no longer play with. And so I would just be really mindful of what you buy. And if you're blessed to have grandparents in your life or extended family or birthday parties, people just give and give, and you just end up with so much stuff. And it drives me nuts as a mom now. I'm like, oh my gosh, we can't breathe. I feel like get stuff out of the playroom. There's so much. How did we get all this stuff? But as minimal as possible, I think it just helps. And your kids won't expect the maximum of what they continue to see. And that's one thing we're even working on with our 7-year-old is just contentment and gratitude. And we don't have to have and have and have and have. And that conversation, I'm like, I wonder if that would have been different if I was different as a mom early on when I just purchase things. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so I would encourage the minimalism mom life when it comes to toys and that kind of thing, because they don't need it and they don't always want it. I'm like, let's go play and interact and read and do other things.
Yeah. I mean, I also had heard like very early on when I became a mom about the idea of like having a good group of girlfriends and just sharing things between each other that would make it more kind of cost efficient for everybody, because if everyone's at a different phase of motherhood or parenthood and you know, they don't need the bassinet part of the baby stroller or the bugaboo stroller, then you can give that to, you know, the next person. So that was also a really smart thing that I've done with a lot of my close girlfriends, of just kind of having a couple of those kind of big ticket items be rotated between us. And obviously, of course, like in a clean way, but like just being able to do that instead of all buying like the same very expensive stroller or, you know.
Yes, absolutely. And even the small things, you know, I have a group of moms in our neighborhood. There's probably 5 of us and we all have kids kind of around the same age. And again, my third was a boy. I had 2 girls. And so, I don't know, you just kind of get lost in it. And I realized one day, I'm like, oh my gosh, he has no trucks. He has no cars. Like, and I texted all them. I'm like, if y'all have any dumpsters or bulldog, like any just like boy stuff, you want to get rid of. And they were like, yes, please. We have this box that never gets played with. Please take it. Please. And I'm like, thank you. So as the recipient, I'm like, thank you. And then I give them, you know, I dropped off some shoes just this week at a neighbor's house from our second daughter. I cleaned out her shoe bin. I'm like, you have so many shoes that don't fit.
Yeah.
And take these. So it's just, yes. So to your point, have community around you and just, yes, do that. Live that life. Cause I'm like, it makes it so much easier and more cost effective for sure.
When it comes to fertility, this is a question that, you know, I see come up a lot. So we do a lot of different episodes on a variety of different subjects, all under the categories of before, during, after baby. We've talked a lot about fertility struggles, secondary infertility, IVF, all the different kind of methods and routes to getting pregnant or becoming a parent. And a lot of those are very expensive. If they're tests, even if you have insurance, it's still really expensive. If you need to go to acupuncture, or if you have to go do certain tests that aren't covered by your insurance, like it's a very expensive journey for a lot of people. And a question that always comes up is, should I be budgeting for this ahead of time, or how can I afford and budget myself in this fertility journey? Because of course, wanting to become a parent or wanting to become pregnant is, something that people are dying to do, really wanting to spend money, or, wanting to be able to have that blessing in their life. And I feel like the budgeting aspect, especially because it's fairly new, all the different ways to, get tests done or get pregnant. But what would you say about the kind of budgeting angle there? Because it is very expensive.
I know, it's so expensive. I know. And I think that this is a hard one because, like you said, even just being moms, I'm like, I just know, and I could only imagine that struggle if that was my story. I've had friends that have been in this boat, and it's heartbreaking. It really is. It's one of the hardest things to walk through, I think, as a woman, where you long for something and it's just not happening. And so really what I have found, because I encourage people, one of my tried and true principles is living debt free. And so what that does mean is that it will take time. So my advice would be to say, yeah, for some reason, if you have a history in your family of this being an issue, or if there are tests, which I don't even know right now if there are, to see ahead of time, hey, is everything good? Can I do an ultrasound and make sure, are my periods consistent? Like if there are data points that if it all seems pretty normal, I would say, I think you're okay just to continue to go. And if you run into something, a year down the road, then to look. But if you know ahead of time, hey, this could be an issue, again, whatever the health reason may be, then I would start just saying, hey, here's a goal we have. And just in case, we're going to put some money away. And so being on the forefront and knowing, okay, that we're going to sacrifice and say no to things and do this. And I think that's for anyone in this journey. I've talked, Katherine, to people that sadly, they took on debt for it, which again, I'm not going to sit here and tell someone if that's what they choose to do, that is what they choose to do. But the hard part was when it didn't happen and they had to go down the adoption route, they were still paying that loan.
Right.
For 5 years. And so the heartbreak just continued to put, so as much as you can prep on ahead of time, as much cash as you can go in with, and really all of it is, it's going to be, it's going to give you more peace, I think, on the other end and the other side of it. So I know that may not be what everyone chooses, and that's totally fine, but that would be my advice to people, is to say, hey, if you know ahead of time, you can start saving earlier. But if you do run in to say, okay, we're going to press pause on everything, we're going to put as much money as possible, even take on an extra job, do what we have to do to stockpile some money as we begin this, whether it's IVF or whatever route they choose. So there's that. And then the adoption route, there's multiple ways to go. There's very expensive adoptions, international. There's more, domestic adoptions, even within the foster care system here in just America. If you're in America, that's less expensive. There's a book called I Adopted Debt Free, which is a beautiful book of a woman, and she went down that route and found ways. So I think there's many different options out there and routes, but I think for me and what I've seen doing this over 12 years, talking to many moms, I would encourage people to save as much cash as possible going into that process.
When you're even thinking of having a kid, what would you say to somebody who wants to know, like, what is, if you look at your year, and whether you have a 1-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 14-year-old, how much should you be saving or keeping in your mind that a child costs per year?
Yeah, I think it's going to vary. So on average, I think that I read an article, it's $12,000 a year per child is the number that I read. But I would say, Katherine, that's a spectrum, because I think raising a kid, just like the baby stuff we were talking about, right? You can get a cheap used umbrella stroller, or you can get a bugaboo stroller. Like, you can choose that range. So there's a lot of range there's a big range when raising kids and what you decide to do. So, that's the average is 12,000, but I would say too, I think that you can do it less expensive. I think you can do it more expensive. And I even think about if people choose private school, if they do travel sports, like there's all these additional costs, if that's what you choose to do with your family, that obviously you're going to be on the higher end of that, way higher end of that, if those are different routes you choose later in life. So I would do it honestly just month to month. And I would look to see, okay, this upcoming month, we're in May right now. So what do we have going on in May? So I know for me, my daughter, she has 2 birthday parties coming up. They have their after school programs. So we went to dinner. You can kind of map out and see, okay, here are the things month to month that we have, and then budget per that. Because it's kind of hard to say over the scope of a full year, because I think things just change. So I want your budget to be flexible to, what you guys are doing as a family.
Yeah, because somebody had asked how much you should think of having saved to want to start a family or have another child. Like, how much do you think that you need to have saved to say like, oh, I can afford to have another kid?
My take, honestly, if you want to have a baby, I would have a baby no matter where you are. And that might be controversial, but I think that whether it's getting married or having a baby, I think those are things that you choose to do with your life, and then your money will follow. Now, sure, if you don't have bills and you don't have debt and you have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses in the bank, it's probably going to be a little less stressful, right? If you're in a different position, for sure. But I wouldn't tell someone don't have a baby if you have debt or whatever it may be. So I would say you can continue that process, and you can actually become really financially stable even with a baby. Just because you have a baby, that doesn't have to stop you. Sure, it adds an expense like we've been talking about, but it doesn't have to completely unravel your whole financial plan.
Okay. And then the big question that came up like several different times from different people was the whole idea of saving for college. Is that something that you recommend people start when you're pregnant, when you have a baby, when they hit a certain age? When is that, as parents, something that you should start focusing on?
Yes, that's a great question. So I personally, we have what's called the baby steps, our solution. So 7 steps. So really that the first step is to get $1,000 emergency fund. This is before, during, after baby. This is regardless of kids. Become debt free except for your house. Get a 3 to 6 month worth of expenses savings in the bank. That's there. You don't touch it. Then from there, you want to fund 15% of your income into retirement. And then after that, during that, then you will start saving for kids' college. So kids' college may be on pause until you get your own financial house in order. So that's what I encourage people to do, because you want that solid financial foundation first and foremost for your own. You want to be saving for retirement first, even though parents think they're giving their kids dignity and putting their kids first. But you're going to retire regardless whether your kids go to college or not. So taking care of that is not selfish. It's really wise. And then look into college savings. So there's 2 main ways to save for college. There's an ESA, an educational savings account, and you can put up to $2,000 in that a year. But there is an income limit. If you reach a certain level of income, you don't qualify for an ESA. And then if that's the case, or you want to go a different route, there's what's called 529 plans. And so with either of these options, I would recommend getting with an investment professional to sit down with you and help you, because there's mutual funds involved. There's different routes you can go with these. But what's great about a lot of these is they grow tax-free, which is awesome. And so math nerds, I feel like me, like with compound interest and knowing, your money grows, which is awesome. So that tax-free option is really beautiful. But I would not do prepaid tuition. I would not do state-specific tuition. I would make it broad. And then a financial advisor will be able to sit with you and say, hey, here's how much you need to invest per month, depending on the age of your child. And then inflation, we can talk about that. The cost of tuition going up. I think the whole college discussion is interesting. And I even question, Katherine, ours are so little that I'm like, what is college going to look like?
I know.
And I don't
Crazy.
have all, but I'm thinking it's the amount of tuition, the ROI on college right now, I think has a huge question mark of, is it worth the investment? And I went to college. I'm all for higher education. I think it's wonderful. But the student loan crisis, I think I think there's a lot of downside of how we've been doing it. So if you as a parent are able to assist and help financially save for your kids' college, it is a gift. Your kids are not entitled to that. It is not a requirement. It is a gift, and it's very generous if you as a parent can do that. And if you can't, if you have a child, if you're watching this and they're going to college, in 2 years, and they're in high school and you're freaking out because you don't have money saved. It's okay. Your kid can still go to school without you helping them. They can go to an in-state school. They can have in-state tuition. They can go to a community college for the first year or two. There's scholarships and grants. There are ways to go about this in a really wise manner that does not put them deep in financial, hole as they graduate with a ton of debt. They can still do it. They can still do it. But if you as a parent have the ability to, it's a gift and a blessing for sure.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I mean, it's something that people are talking a lot about, is just like what college is even going to look like. I mean, elementary school is getting crazy. Everything is getting more and more expensive. So it's an interesting thing to think about, even having like a 1.5-year-old, just like what that would one day look like, which, my brother, who's graduating this weekend, just said that he can't wait for my daughter to go to University of Michigan like him. So we'll see if she does that. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. This was amazing. And this was just so helpful because it's been such a popular subject that people have asked so much about. And I think that it's ever changing, but it's really great to be able to kind of get those ideas in people's heads and questions answered just about different stages of parenting, different stages of before, during, and after babies, and be able to get some wisdom and knowledge in those spaces, because the world is very expensive right now. So it's a big subject.
And Katherine, I would say too, just a last piece of encouragement for moms, or parents out there watching, put the blinders on. Like, parenthood is the most comparison feeling driven part of our lives. So stop. Don't worry if they bottle feed or breastfeed, natural birth, all of it. If they got the Pottery Barn bath towels and you didn't, it doesn't matter. You really have to quit the comparisons when it comes to our stuff and our kids, because they're so easy to compare, and that's what can drive a lot of us spending money that we don't need to spend. So do what's best for you and your family, and that takes a level of taking a deep breath and probably a level of maturity too, to say no. But you're going to thank yourself. You really are, years down the road.
I love that. It reminds me of this little graphic that my friend sent me that had two kids sliding down a slide together that said bottle fed and breastfed, and that both kids will end up eating McDonald's off of the floor at some point in their lives. So it's all the same. So I like the idea of making sure that we keep in mind not to compare ourselves, because it's true. It's, you might want to get the Pottery Barn blankets, but which is great if you want to do that. And also, so thank you so much, Rachel. And we'll make sure to put all of the links to all of your amazing courses and information and your Instagram, and put it in the newsletter that will come out later this evening.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Katherine. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.